The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome. Once again, my name is Michael Kane. I am the founder of Teachers for Choice. Today, we have an amazing show for you. Safe to Sleep program is ended by HHS, and we have the legendary Dr. Paul Thomas on to talk about that. Right after that, we are talking about the real Peter Marks with React 19 co-chair, Dr. Joel Walskog. A lot of you might have seen that drop. And then we have Mothers-to-Be with Claire Dooley and another people study. So you need to stick around for everything that we have going on here. Just an amazing show. One piece of news before we bring Dr. Thomas right on. If you are in New York or the Northeast, we are back in Albany. Restore and reclaim our jobs, our exemptions, our rights. Mary Holland, Naomi Wolf, myself, John Gilmore, Shannon Joy, Bobby Ann Cox, and on and on and on. Going to the Capitol in Albany, as we do every May. Actually, I was just talking to Dr. Walskog. He was up there with us 2 years ago with members of React 19 with vaccine-injured children, trying to get this message out there. So be there on Tuesday in Albany. If you can't, CHD TV is going to be live streaming this. Enough on the news. Let's bring him in, the legendary pediatrician, Dr. Paul Thomas. Dr. Thomas, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's great to be here, Michael.
Yes. So HHS has ended the Safe to Sleep program. This is the program that was designed or told to us or messaged to us that it would save your baby from SIDS, putting them on their back, and other recommendations that were coming out. Mother Jones has come out attacking Robert Kennedy and the Trump administration, canceling a program that reduces SIDS. Enter the anti-vaxxers. Okay, so what's the real deal here? You just wrote a book about this, Vax Facts. You are, in my opinion, one of the authoritative sources to go to on all things dealing with kids, especially relating to SIDS, especially relating to vaccines. What do you think about what's going on here, this program being pulled, and the media's reaction to it?
Excellent question. I'm glad you asked me about this. Let me take folks back a bit. I practiced pediatrics for over 35 years, and when I came out of training in 1988, SIDS was not on our radar.
Right.
Now, the World Health Organization classified it as a disease, SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Anytime they say syndrome, it means they don't know what causes it. Back in 1971, and there was no SIDS back in the 50s, 60s, all right? It was just not a thing. Babies weren't just suddenly dying. That was not heard of. They started seeing a few cases in the 70s, so they actually created this classification. But here's an interesting piece of history. In 1979, again, it's not real common yet, they removed the designation that coroners would use. So if a baby suddenly dies, you want to know why. And so coroners had access to the diagnostic code, prophylactic inoculation and vaccination. In other words, they could say this baby was vaccinated and died. The cause of death was the vaccine. That was removed in 1979. Folks, that's over 35 years ago. Basically, in my entire career, coroners could not say that vaccines were causing death. So basically, it was just SIDS, and nobody had any idea what was going on. And I think that's really important to understand that that went on historically, and we were handcuffed to this label. Now, the Academy of Pediatrics in 1992, I remember this, as a pediatrician, you read the journal, the AAP journal, and they came up with this back to sleep program. And then later, the NIH changed the name of it. You had it at the top of the show. What was it called?
The Back to Sleep program? Safe to sleep.
Safe to sleep. There you go.
Yes.
And that same thing. So that was just a NIH designation. And we were told instantly that, I mean, it seemed like almost immediately there was this fairly significant reduction in deaths. That's a good thing, right? I mean, we all want that, right?
Yeah, absolutely a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where Mother Jones and any of the outcry we're hearing right now is like, why would you remove a program that was saving babies' lives? Well, here's the kicker. It actually wasn't the program that was saving lives. In fact, infant deaths continued to go up. There was a published data that came from 1999 through 2015 that the US SIDS rate declined 35%. But infant death rates due to accidental suffocation increased 183%. And they even changed the term. Instead of calling all the infant death SIDS, they called it SUID, S-U-I-D, sudden unexplained infant death. Basically, what happened here is we had diagnostic substitution. So you just don't call it SIDS, but babies are still dying. Neil Miller wrote a masterpiece paper. I think it's the most thorough paper. Anybody that's interested in SIDS and its relationship to vaccines, you've got to get this. It's called Vaccines and Sudden Infant Death, an Analysis of the VAERS Database, 1990 to 2019. So we have almost 30 years of data. He reviewed the medical literature, and he was able to pull several studies, 6 great studies that actually looked at when these babies died relative to when they got the vaccine. So there's a table in there, table 2, and it shows you day of vaccination, 440. There were 2,600 infants if you put all those 6 studies together. So you had, I think it was 17% of the deaths day 1, but by day 2, that had jumped to 46%. So day 2 is a very dangerous day for these babies. And by day 7, you've got 78% of the babies died within a week of the vaccines. That is astounding because these babies weren't dying right before vaccines. It was clearly temporally related to the vaccines. Now, another shocker that I just wouldn't have imagined until I read this data, if you look at another table in that study, it's figure 2. What this showed was like mind-boggling. So day 1, day 3, and day 7 are shown in those bar graphs. And the lighter colored graph is the SIDS, and the other graph is all deaths. And what you're seeing is that basically almost all infant deaths are happening right after vaccines.
Oh my God.
So this is the elephant in the room, if you will. Clearly, and the p-values, for those of you who are scientists, it's 0.00001, something like that. I mean, it is absolutely, any way you look at this data, vaccines are killing babies, period. Now, to then try to say it's the back to sleep program that is saving these babies, no, that was just diagnostic substitution. And, they've played this game of diagnostic substitution before. Most people believe that the polio vaccine eradicated polio, right? And that's probably what you've heard, Michael. I mean, you're better read, so you probably know better. But my mom, most people of my generation and older, and in fact, most kids today, think that the polio vaccine got rid of polio. They played a little trick. When they did that massive polio campaign, they changed the definition of polio from any paralysis to you had to have 60 days of paralysis. It just got rid of almost all the polio, just like snap of a finger. I remember reading an article in India, they had a similar trick. They went in and did a massive campaign because they had 50,000 cases of polio. And in the next year, there were 0 cases of polio, but 51,000 cases of non-paralytic polio. Diagnostic substitution. They made it mandatory to send samples to the state lab in India if you wanted to diagnose polio, but they didn't set up a mechanism for doing that. So basically, polio didn't change a bit with vaccination, but it was eradicated because of diagnostic criteria that were established. So COVID, you all remember, to this day, in fact, the vaccine, you don't start looking at deaths from vaccine until 14 days later. we know from the VAERS data that most of the deaths are happening day 1, 2, 3, 4. So you get a vaccine for COVID, you die, and that's called COVID illness death because you can't count it as COVID until 14 days after. Crazy tricks. Anyway, I digress. I apologize for that.
Wow. Dr. Thomas, that just was like a masterclass in 8 minutes in some really frightening stuff, some data tricks. Actually, I am well read, but it's still even mind blowing for me to hear. I want to know this not back to I keep saying back to sleep, this safe to sleep program. It looks like HHS is going to leave it up on the website. It'll still be there to be referenced, but they're pulling back on referring it, on pushing it, on messaging it, and putting it out there. As a parent, my kid's a little older now, but I'm not that far away from when keeping your kid on their back up until 2, 3. I mean, like this was obsessed upon by pediatricians and people that it was so important. I remember saying to my wife at one point, I mean, my son could do this. Like I see him. Like why am I so worried if he's on his back or on his side? He could lift his head up. Can you just talk about the just the general philosophy? Is it good? Are there parts of it that are good? Should we throw it all out? What's your professional opinion about that?
Yeah, great question. First of all, let me point out something. Almost all the deaths, I think it's 90% of the SIDS, happen in the first 6 months. It's so, SIDS is the first 12 months, but almost all of these deaths are happening in the first 6 months. Now, remember, after 6 months, almost all babies can flip over and end up on their tummy on their own. And in fact, a lot of babies prefer sleeping on their tummies. So you'll have parents used to call all the time, what do I do? My baby keeps flipping over. I know they're supposed to be on their back. There's nothing you can do if that's where how they prefer to sleep, unless you're going to be awake all night flipping them back onto their back. Yet, okay, so when we are putting them on their back, that's when they're all dying. So the whole program is a mess. It's not working. It didn't work, and that wasn't the issue. Now, so many different things get blamed for SIDS, why these babies are dying. It's always anything but the vaccine. I showed you the data that it's clearly the vaccines in almost all cases. But, parents get blamed for, it's mom was obese and she smothered her baby, either nursing or otherwise. Smoke in the room's too hot. We were taught all these things as pediatricians. These are the reasons because, of course, we want to not have anybody think that it might have anything to do with the vaccines. I think it's very unfortunate that kids, we mistakenly were told to put kids on these very hard surfaces. I mean, if you have a new baby and they're fussy, I can almost guarantee you that how do you like sleeping on a rock? I mean, come on. If they had a little bit of cushion, if they could be made comfortable, if they could have, you're born and you're forced out of the birth canal or yanked out if it's a C-section, there's all this tension in your body. And if you could just have some nurture, some gentle, some soothing. Why do babies do so well when you hold them as opposed to you put them down? They want to be soothed. Yeah, it's a very misguided program, whether it was intentionally done to, steer us away from realizing it was the vaccines or whether it was just that was a coincidence. Who knows?
Do you think that in your own opinion, do you think there is any space for safe to sleep? I think you already answered this. Or is it something we should not be referencing and using as new parents? In your own opinion.
I mean, if you are a new parent and you want to protect your child from SIDS, from dying, and Michael, let me put things in perspective here also. So, and I cover this in my book, Vax Facts. In the US today, the 2021 data, and it's similar for most recent years, there are about 20,000 infants who die. Wow. US has one of the highest infant mortalities in the world. You're talking the top 30 industrialized country. I think we're number 28 on one graph and 23 on another. We are doing very poorly. We also happen to have one of the most aggressive vaccination campaigns, more vaccines given to infants. And the worst of them all is hepatitis B for newborns. That one has 250 micrograms of aluminum when the maximum dose for a newborn should be somewhere between 10 and 15. It should be 0, but acceptable toxic levels, 10 to 15, we inject 250. Babies aren't dying while they're awake. As a pediatrician, let me tell you, being a pediatrician was easy because kids wouldn't die on your watch. If a baby stopped breathing, you simply shook them, rubbed them, and they started breathing. So when are babies dying? They're dying in their sleep. They're dying during nap. You go off and take a shower. You come back and your baby's dead. I had one of those cases in my practice. This was an EMT mom, and her baby was blue and dead. It happens while you're sleeping, and it doesn't happen when you're awake because there's something about the immaturity of the brain, and then you smash that immune system with so many toxins, it shuts off that respiratory drive, and they just stop breathing. We have studies out of the NICU recently published that showed your chance of death is double, not death, sorry, apnea, which is not breathing. So in the observed environment in the hospital, your chance of not breathing, stopping breathing, is double if you were vaccinated. This was a very good data set done just recently published. So, and ICU nurses, I talked to them, they hated doing the infant vaccines because they would just do them anyway on routine, even if you were preemie. They would do it right before shift change because they knew that baby was going to stop breathing and it require a lot of effort to bring them back. Ridiculous. We have known this is a problem. So what you should worry about is what's actually killing our children, and that's the vaccines. Sorry to say it, but bluntly, but that's what it is. With nearly 20,000 infants dying in the US per year, and knowing that most of those deaths, at least the SIDS and the SUDIs, and the suffocations and you add it all together, all the different categories they've created, it's probably close to 7 or 8,000 of those 20,000 deaths are likely related to vaccines. How many infants are dying from diseases for which we have a vaccine? Do you have any clue, Michael?
Oh, I think it's significantly less, but I'll let you tell us the actual number.
I should have done all the math, but here's the gist of it all. So measles is one of the scariest, right? It's always in the news because it can be deadly. This year, one of the worst years for measles in the last 2-3 decades, there were 2 deaths in children. However, deep dive into those deaths shows that they actually didn't die from measles. So it's still 0 deaths from one of the deadliest diseases known in the modern world. It's basically still 0 in the US, in our country. The next scariest one that you're always going to hear from your pediatrician is whooping cough, pertussis. And the deaths from pertussis have varied from 0 to an average of maybe 4 per year out of 4 million births. We have roughly 4 million births in the US, or at least we used to, until fertility rates are changing that, and it's going to plummet. We're seeing that, and then that's my prediction. But even if it was 4 million deaths, and you had an average of 4 infants dying per year, that's 1 in a million. How does that compare to 8,000? It's a whole different realm. If you want to protect your baby, you've got to take a serious look at the vaccines.
And that's just discussing death. That's not even discussing autism and chronic disease and all other types of things that we just don't know what happened. Thank God Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is at the helm in HHS and is shifting this focus from this obsession with infection to the elephant in the room. What is happening with chronic illness in this country? Thank God. We're almost out of time here, Dr. Thomas. Everybody, please read Vax Facts. Get this book. The information we went over here is in Vax Facts, in detail and in depth. Dr. Thomas, any final words for the audience here?
My final words are absolutely get informed before you go and let your child get a vaccine. There are other things you can do to have a healthy child. You need to get away from the fear mongering and get back to common sense. We can have healthy children today. RFK is on the right track. I mean, the data's there. Let's get more data. I mean, all you've got to do for every infant death is look at when were they vaccinated. And if it was in the week prior to that death, there you go. You've got your answer, right? And we will confirm the data that has already been put forward by Neil Miller. But feed organic, filter your water, remove stress, turn off the TV, get outside, get sunshine, play in the dirt, and whatever you do, read Vax Facts before you choose to vaccinate. Thank you.
Some uncommon common sense. Dr. Paul Thomas, thank you so much for coming on for this real powerful segment today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Wow. That is just really intense, really powerful, and really, really important. And on the heels of that, we have another extremely important guest and topic to talk about, talking about the real Peter Marks, co-chair of React 19. We have Dr. Joel Wallskog. Dr. Wallskog, thank you so much for joining us today. So greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
So we saw over at Del Bigtree at the High Wire broke this big story on the real Peter Marks. Peter Marks, Dr. Peter Marks, was at the FDA, and you and React 19 have had ongoing interactions with Dr. Marks about the COVID-19 shot, about the injuries that have happened. As a matter of fact, I think it's safe to say the real Peter Marks, the website, everything that just broke sensationally wouldn't exist without you and without React 19 and the work that you've done. Why don't you just tell people a little bit about that, about how that's set up and how it came to be?
Yeah, so Brian Dressen, who is my other co-chair, the other co-chair of React 19, had initiated meetings with Peter Marks, who is the head of biologics at the FDA. So he's a big player in Operation Warp Speed. So why is even Operation Warp Speed called such? Well, it's because Peter Marks is a Star Trek fan. So it's actually called Operation Warp Speed because of Peter Marks. So
Are you
he's
wait? Are you serious about that? That
yeah,
he coined that term because his own personal
and it's my
sci-fi?
understanding. Yes. So I try to explain that just to people because he is really instrumental in all of what happened uh, with regards to the COVID vaccines and their continued just simple claim of quote safe and effective end quote. So Brianne Dressen, who is my co-chair of React 19, really initiated meetings with Dr. Peter Marks and his team back in 2021. And these meetings occurred kind of behind closed doors between 2021 and 2023. They didn't know that they were being recorded, but we have kept all the recordings of all of the Zoom meetings. We've kept all the recorded, all the emails and so forth. We decided to release those because we think the public needs to know. We were really honestly hoping that these meetings would come to something, would come to something where the public was notified of what I would say is internal concerns that they were having, but they obviously never weren't. They never were released. Then in conjunction with ICANN, which is Informed Consent Action Network, in conjunction with Aaron Siri from ICANN, in conjunction with Del Bigtree and in Highwire, we were able to release all of these tapes. So all of these tapes are really all of the interactions of members of React 19 with Peter Marks and his team.
Wow. It's so important that you guys did that very important move of documenting what was going on, because I know, a lot of people that came in, got the COVID shot, thought they were doing the right thing, got injured. Oh my God, people need to know, right? We need to tell the leaders what's happening. So you were all acting in good faith and going out there to do what you thought was best. But it doesn't appear Dr. Marks was acting in good faith, even from the very beginning of meeting with you. Tell us a little bit about his reaction, a little bit about what he said, and follow up or lack thereof follow up from him.
Well, I'd like to, it's a very complex subject. So I would encourage people to spend an hour or two, get on this website, which is www.therealpetermarks.com, because it'll take a little while to digest all the information. But we meet with him and Brian Dressen and others from React 19 meet with him over and over and over. Tell them stories of injured, but really talk about science. And we talk about articles that we've read. We've talked about safety signals that we believe are there. Every meeting, he was what I would describe as aloof and dismissive. And the meetings would always end that we give him a list of questions, and he says he'll get back to us, and he never does. So that was, he was just extremely dismissive, and I would say he just placated us and listened to us for a while, And that continued, honestly, for over 2 years
Wow.
until finally they just ended. So, but we had some real significant science-based questions, and I want to talk a little bit about MIS, which is multi-system inflammatory syndrome, particularly in children. That is a diagnosis that did not exist, okay, prior to COVID. That is a new diagnosis that's out there. So one of the problems with seeing safety signals is you don't really know the background rate, which is what is the rate of a certain adverse event or condition just in the general public. But because MIS in particular did not exist as a diagnosis for COVID, one case is above the background rate, because in this, if the diagnosis didn't exist before, the background rate is 0. So we talked to him over and over about there's 20 cases that even they admit occurred and were documented where children developed multi-system inflammatory syndrome and ended up in the ICU. They were very ill. That is an obvious safety signal. If you have 20 cases of a new, deadly condition and the background rate is 0, that would really stop any vaccination program according to, history and regulatory guidelines. But again, we just got placated, and the same thing happened every meeting. I was very frustrated. I give Brianne Dressen a lot of kudos because she had the tenacity to continue coming back and back. And I always was very frustrated because I felt like it was a waste of time. But when you look at this website in totality, and people, if you spend enough time to understand the timeline and what was happening, as they were literally, Dr. Peter Marks was, going on commercials and his little cartoon commercials encouraging vaccination of the COVID vaccines, and just saying those oversimplistic words of safe and effective. Look at what he was saying publicly, and then take a look at the timeline and what he was telling us privately. And I want to encourage people to make their own decision if what he was saying publicly was the same he was saying privately.
Wow, that is really shocking. 20 children that develop a condition that never existed prior to the COVID shot, and all you get is, we'll get back to you, we'll look into it, and nothing happens. One of the big subsets of injuries that have happened post-COVID shot are neurological injuries. There's been a big impact there. We actually have a clip from the real Peter Marks from one of these secretly recorded Zoom meetings. Lou, why don't we show that clip?
What you'd like to see from FDA.
We've got thousands of people that are having issues with the neurological side effects to the COVID vaccines. We're currently involved with research at the NIH, but the research at the NIH has been kind of mired and slowed in the last couple of months. Unfortunately, because we are not able to get any kind of acknowledgement or communication to the medical community that this is happening, we've got a lot of people across the country that are sick and showing up in ERs and medical clinics without any kind of proper acknowledgement or provisions of any sort to help them. Unfortunately, now this is happening to teenagers. Unfortunately, the NIH has told us, the very select few that have been there, that early intervention is something that definitely could help stop the neurological decline that happens after the vaccination reaction ensues. But because the medical community doesn't know that this exists, these people are not being afforded that essential medical care.
So there was Brianne Dressen, your co-chair of React 19. Just for people who don't know, please let everyone know why she's laying down during that Zoom.
She's ill. She was severely injured, primarily on neurological injury after her AstraZeneca injection that she got as part of the AstraZeneca trial. But watch that video, and watching that video, it's almost like she's begging for acknowledgement for herself, but moreover, for all of the other people that are injured. Now, remember, there's a little bit more to that story with Brianne. Brianne Dressen was flown out. She and 22 other people in 2021 and 2022 were flown out to the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, studied with their neurological adverse events. They were studied, recognized. Arvind Nath, who is a head neurologist at the NIH, wrote an article that went to preprint, but then never got published. But so we have the NIH, which clearly recognizes these neurological injuries, studied them, flew these people out there, and then just kind of buried the information. But you have NIH, who clearly recognizes the neurological injuries, but we're literally telling the head of biologics at the FDA, the head of the COVID vaccine, and he still denies that there's a risk of neurological adverse events. The only really things in the end they acknowledged was, as you probably all know, was myocarditis. And myocarditis absolutely occurs. For us, it's about 5% of the adverse events, but about 70 to 80% of the people that are injured by the COVID shots have a neurological component to their injury. That's the vast majority of these injuries are neurologic, and that's what we strove after. We pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And while the NIH recognized it, the FDA did not recognize it and would not put any degree of communication to the general public or to our healthcare system and our healthcare providers. That's the problem. So then when we go to get care, we see providers that have no idea about potential adverse events. And if they don't have some suspicion, they're going to just gaslight these people, which is what happens to 99.9% of us.
Wow. And it's just intentional non-communication between the FDA and the NIH. Who oversees that? HHS oversees that. That's where the buck has to stop. So we've seen Dr. Peter Marks has been replaced with the new administration and with Robert Kennedy heading HHS with Dr. Vinay Prasad. Now, what do you think about that replacement? Are you hopeful? Are you skeptical? Tell me what you think about this shift in personnel.
Well, first of all, being done with Peter Marks is, to me, is just wonderful. I call him the devil. I think he is truly evil, and I don't really downplay that. I mean, again, his dismissive behavior towards all these people that have been injured is just not acceptable. So I am ecstatic that he is gone. But time will tell. Okay, so the truth is in action. The truth isn't in words. So now we need to switch. I'm excited that there's a new person that's going to lead the FDA as well as the COVID vaccines under the FDA. But again, time will tell. This has been an interesting 4 years.
Yeah. No, I understand it. It also makes me think of all the moms I met who first introduced this to me, who said it's been an interesting 2 and 3 decades dealing with it from the other vaccines as well too. So I totally relate. I totally understand what you're saying. And I agree as well too. I'm really excited. Bobby Kennedy's in place, Jay Bhattacharya, Marty Makary, now Dr. Prasad. Very, very excited about this. But we also got to see precisely what happens. It's been, 3 months or so. Some things are going great. Some things are moving slow. We must hold everybody accountable. It doesn't matter if we're friends with people there. We have previous relationships. I agree with you 100%. It's about what happens now. What is the real change? And how do we protect and help heal those who weren't protected, who were already injured? Yeah, I agree with you completely.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the FDA we have to address. I mean, all the federal agencies, really should be, remember what they're there for. The CDC and FDA are there to protect the American public from really drugs and medical devices, particularly new ones. And in this case, they were the active promoters of an experimental countermeasure called the COVID shot. So that is completely a conflict of interest. And that was never the intention of the FDA, is to be a promoter of these countermeasures. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And again, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm with you, Michael, with the new administration. But I do want to say I'm cautiously optimistic.
I entirely understand that caution. Dr. Joel Wallskog, thank you so much for your advocacy, for your work. Everybody can support React 19 at react19.org. And please go to therealpetermarks.com and go through that material. Just shocking what this man, who is supposed to serve and protect the American public, we know who he was really serving and protecting. Go look at all of that evidence. Dr. Wolskog, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Michael. And CHD.
Absolutely. Wow, a powerful half hour. And stick around. Don't go anywhere yet, because we still have our mothers to be segment, as well as another people's story. So let's roll that stuff right now.
Good morning, CHD. I'm Claire Dooley, and you're watching the Mothers to Be segment. This is a new segment coming to CHD TV. We're really excited about it. Each week, I will be alternating hosting with Isabella Yon, and we are going to cover topics that are really important to fertility, conception, and all things motherhood. So today, I'm really excited about the guest I'm going to be bringing on. He is the co-founder of Mothers to Be, and his name is Jonathan Tommey. Many of you know him as Polly Tommey's husband. Thanks for being here, John.
Very good morning, Claire, and thank you very much for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so timely given that we just had an awesome Mother's Day to dive into this. So can you share a bit about your background, your work with Billy, the clinic, and how you use a functional integrative approach in holistic interventions?
Cool. So it all started really, I was very keen on anatomy and physiology. So I did a first degree in sports science at Manchester, and then moved to London, where I met Polly. I had 3 wonderful children. Billy was diagnosed just after the age of 2. And we were really struggling with developing a very functional and integrative approach for him. The doctors said that he would never talk and he should be in an institution from a young age and we should just get on with our life. But I looked at Billy and he had chronic diarrhea. He was banging his head. His behaviors were terrible. He had no speech, and the doctor who said he would never speak was sort of a real incentive for me to start looking at his health. So I came across to America and met up with Sid Baker, John Pangborn, Ken Bok, everybody behind the Defeat Autism Now conferences. Maureen McDonald put those together brilliantly, and then set up really a whole protocol for Billy based on supporting his health through biomedical interventions, functional and integrative approaches. So a lot of diagnostic testing was done through various laboratories, and then changes in his diet, supplementation, etc. And we did that for year after year, including gluten and casein free. And he developed his first word after losing about 17 after his MMR shot, which injured him. And he began to talk again. His behaviors improved, his gut function improved, and we were sort of getting him back, which was fantastic. So that really inspired me to support others. So I did a second degree in clinical nutrition and set up a clinic in 2007, which I oversee over 900 patients diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So for me, looking at the importance of a functional and integrative health protocol approach to him, and witnessing for myself, not only in Billy, but across most of my patients, inspired me really to think about what we should be doing in preparing to have a child. And hence Mothers to Be was then in the making, and it's taken me 6 years with Isabella, my daughter, to put this together. And we think it's probably one of the best websites in terms of preconception support, pregnancy support, postpartum, and baby's first year that's available to anyone to see.
Absolutely. And I think it's such an inspiring story, knowing how you dedicated yourself to the nutrition of your child, but then to think further, how can we prevent this situation from happening? And so when Bella, your daughter, had, her children, I think it became super relevant. And when I became pregnant, Bella was the first person I reached out to before anyone else, because I was all of a sudden hit with all these decisions, even though I thought I knew so much. And you and Bella had built it all. I mean, it was there. And so I find that really impressive. I would love for you to walk us through some currently some current infertility statistics, because I think this is a lot more prevalent than we, pay attention to.
So when you look at American statistics, you've got around 12 million women who are struggling with infertility. And obviously, it's not just the mums to be, it's the dads to be as well. So they're part of this whole package. Obviously, the man has to have mobile sperm in good health, but also an account that's over 300 million or thereabouts per ejaculation. The mother, of course, has to have a healthy cell that she releases to be fertilized. So a baby starts when that first fusion of the cell happens, and I would look at that developing embryo, which then goes into a fetal stage, and then obviously baby, as really imperative to start with. And you and Bella are perfect examples of mothers who have followed this protocol and have had wonderful, healthy children. And these are the children that we want everybody to bring into this world, because when you look at the current pandemics of childhood illness and disease and conditions, the pandemic is now out of control. And when you combine that with the rates of infertility going up, then there's a serious issue that we've got to address here. And it's a global issue. It's not just American-based. It's global. And I think Mothers-to-Be really does provide the essence, the foundation for all parents to look through, to become educated on this approach, and to manage and optimize their health in advance of conception.
And something that's really important about this is that the Mothers-to-Be platform, as much as it can be, attempts to be a free resource, right? So anybody can use this. And there's one resource that's my favorite, two in particular we'll cover, is the Nutrient Deficiency Symptom Assessment, which is a lot of words. We call it the NDSA. And it basically just means, hey, we're going to look at all these different aspects in your life, all these different symptoms that you have, and we're going to give you the best shot that we have, given the nutritional background and all these different experts that you've brought onto the table. We're going to try to point to where you're nutrient deficient. And this is super important. I'm not going to explain it because you're better at it, but definitely go through the NDSA and, explain how people can use it and that it's free.
Sure. I mean, that's a really imperative aspect of this whole preparation, but also as is the diet, lifestyle, and toxic assessment as well. So we want people to really start looking and focusing on how they're living, how they're eating, what toxins they're exposed to, the type of lifestyle that they have, and how they can adjust all accordingly, really, to optimize their health. So as you said, these are complete free assessments, and they're not only for mothers and fathers to be, they can be for anybody on this planet. So it really gives you an idea of how you're living and what symptomology you may have based on the nutrients that you may well be deficient in, because we have to remember that about 80% of Americans are nutrient deficient, and this stems pretty much from nutrient empty foods. They're not eating well at all because of the variety of processed foods is just across the board available, and sadly they're missing out on many essential nutrients that are required to optimize and support health. So we can delve into that a little bit, but let's just set the scene on this massive infertility issue and what components can be associated with reducing fertility, because so many couples are pushed by allopathic medicine to get fertility treatments, IVF, etc., and medications to enhance fertility. But no one is really addressing the causative factors. And I think this is the sad failing of allopathic medicine, that they look predominantly at symptoms and how best to manage those symptoms, rather than looking at the causative factors that set them up in the first place. So these are all of the things predominantly associated with infertility. We have environmental toxins, of course, and I am absolutely going to include vaccines and the ingredients within vaccines, especially aluminium or aluminum. allopathic medicine and the approach, because if you take medications, you are guaranteed, and you only have to look at the insert, that some of these deplete nutrients, and this is highlighted in our Understanding Nutrients book for each one. Foods are really important. Obviously, people are eating poor food, and the essence has to be focusing now on organic foods. Garden, household, and personal products, all of these are chronically toxic. EMFs, which is gaining a lot of momentum now, and how efficient we are at detoxifying these. That's a really important component here, how well we can actually detoxify ourselves. So liver and detoxification abilities are really important. Stress and the impact of stress on hormones, especially with the HPA axis, etc. Thyroid, all of these things are impacted by stress. Poor lifestyle habits such as being sedentary, low relaxation, and poor sleep. Sleep massively important. As I said before, nutrient deficiencies and current health symptoms, because if you're a mom with health symptoms that can be attributed to deficiencies in specific nutrients, how can you expect the baby to get everything from you if you're deficient in those? So it's really important to look and optimize your nutritional status in advance of having a child. Susceptibility genes such as methylation genes, they cannot find any genetic specificity to autism. So detoxification genes such as methylation can impact the health of the baby and the mum, of course, and epigenetics, how these toxins affect gene expression. Obesity and weight issues are an issue, as are immune system disturbances such as inflammation and autoimmunity. And as we said, gut health is important, and hormonal imbalances. So there's a whole plethora of things that people have to really look at in advance of conception if they want a healthy baby.
And how could someone ever, tackle all of this by themselves, especially as a mother? I feel like so many women are making all these decisions for their families. A lot of times it's just not the kind of decisions that a father makes. And especially when you dig into, we're thinking about what car seats to buy, what crib to get, what diaper bag to have, what diapers are we going to use? Are we going to use cloth diapers? Are we going to do this? And then you really don't have the time to get into it on this level. And so that's why Mothers to Be is such an important resource. So basically at Mothers to Be, our mission is to improve the health and well-being of parents before, during, and after pregnancy. So a lot of common OBGYN care just does during pregnancy. So by optimizing health prior to conception, we aim to increase the chances of successful pregnancies and births while reducing and promoting optimal long-term health for both parents and babies. And this is really important because I'm going to just say that again. All OBGYNs look at is during pregnancy. And what their care really is we're going to, use as many interventions as possible. Let's get the ultrasounds in. Let's give you these 3 shots during pregnancy. Let's look at all these different interventions that we can do for you. But Mothers to Be says, hey, no, let's just stop. Before we go into all of this crazy stuff, why don't we just prevent these issues from happening? Why don't we look at life holistically? And so if you really want to go deeper, there is an awesome book you can read that was co-written by Jonathan Tommey and Isabella Yan, which is Understanding Nutrients, if you want to talk about that.
Sure. So Understanding Nutrients took us many years to put together, and this is just one example of the 33 nutrients that we cover in the book. Obviously, when we look at nutrition, we need to know exactly what that nutrient is doing for us and how it impacts our health. We also need to know what foods are rich in that specific nutrient. So if you, for example, do the nutrient deficiency symptom assessment and find out that you're potentially deficient in magnesium, we need to know exactly what foods are rich in magnesium. As an example, this is vitamin A. So the symptoms here you discuss with your husband or whoever, and you put in obviously what symptoms you may have. And then at the end of the questionnaire or assessment, you'll receive an email with a complete breakdown of the foods that are highest in that particular nutrient. And there we have the top 5 vitamin A rich foods that were coming up there. So liver pate, sweet potato, carrots, kale, turnip greens, etc. So you can see per 100 grams how much of that particular nutrient is in that food. And we would like to encourage people to gain their nutrition from eating healthy organic foods rather than supplementation. But of course, if you're massively deficient in a specific nutrient, then supplementation may be the only way forward for you. But again, it's selecting the correct supplement and not one filled with fillers, etc. So highly bioavailable. And in the Understanding Nutrients book, it'll have the best form of supplement and how to obtain that, which is the most bioavailable to you. So yeah, we cover pretty much every platform. And I think Mothers2Be offers everything that a parent-to-be, a mother-to-be, and a dad-to-be really needs to look at. And we would encourage everybody to really delve deep into the website, have a read through. We have a platform that you can ask any question you want, and we'll get back to you on that. And obviously, Understanding Nutrients alongside the complementary diet, lifestyle, toxin assessment, and also the nutrient deficiency symptom assessment. Really important for anybody. You don't have to be a mum trying to have a baby or a dad trying to have a baby. You can be anybody that really wants to delve into how you're living, the type of foods you're eating, because there's a drop-down answer for each one of those questions that you're going to ask, and provide all of the information you need to know on that.
Absolutely. And, we find so often that a lot of the supplements that for prenatal care and, during conception and so on and so forth, don't have the right amounts, and they're not bioavailable. We can get deeper into that at another day, that the B vitamins that are in these supplements, it's not great. So we recommend a lot of different supplements on the website as well. And whenever we talk about eating organic food, one of the reasons that's so important, if you guys want to look more into that, we did a special at CHGTV was in Honeycutt, where she called Get the Toxins Out, where she breaks down why glyphosate is so harmful, why it's important to eat organic foods, why it's important to eat non-GMO. And I really think that this segment we're just so grateful for CHGTV to, provide this segment to their viewers, because, John, we were just speaking about this. It's so important to reach health, not just after the damage has been done, but to prevent it from happening in the first place. And that starts before conception.
Absolutely. I mean, Mothers2Be covers a whole host of different silos. Perhaps we could just have time just to list some of those. So it'll give people a little bit more inspiration to go onto the site and delve into that for themselves. So we put together a few slides just basically on all of the sections that we have here on Mothers2Be. So if we could just show a few of those, we'll have a look at the preconception. These are the 4 main categories. So preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, and then baby's first year, all really significant, really, really important. And then the other topics we've got that we're covering, obviously the diet, lifestyle, toxin assessment, and Understanding Nutrients. This is the book that we've written to accompany that. And then obviously gut health, massively important. So a lot of people would say to me, okay, how do I detoxify? And what you have to remember is the gut is this impervious barrier that eliminates toxins from the liver. So everything that your liver brings out in terms of toxicity, it's dumped into the gut for elimination. If you have intestinal permeability or a gut that is struggling with constipation and elimination, then you're going to have a massive resorption of those toxins. So imagine doing this during pregnancy where you're pulling out potentially heavy metals and other toxins from the cells. You're putting it into the blood system, the liver's filtrating and putting them into the gut. If your gut has got a problem, then you're going to absorb all of those toxins back into the blood system and then taken across the placenta into the developing child. So this is, again, the importance of detoxification, supporting liver and detoxification channels in advance of conception, so you can really clear out your body in advance of conception. So really important liver and body detox, as was the gut health. We also cover hormones and stress and anxiety and the impact that can have on hormonal balance. Massively important. So many women are struggling there. Obesity and weight management is a big problem. 30% of adults in America and children are classified as clinically obese, and the impact that can have on fertility is immense. So again, you've got to make sure that all of these things are addressed in advance of conception. We want to maximize your fertility. We want to maximize and optimize your health in advance of conception. And fundamentally, we want to make sure that your developing embryo, then fetus and baby are optimized throughout your whole pregnancy journey. And we cover all of the pregnancy aspects, what's happening to you every month, what nutrients your baby is requiring for each month, how you may be physically feeling, emotionally feeling. All of these things are addressed. So a massive comprehensive resource for anybody trying to have a baby.
Absolutely. That was what made me want to join the team, was knowing, when my friends come to me, I want to be able to say, here you go. This is everything you need. And I want to be a part of that. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, John. And I'm sure we will see you again in the future in this segment. And yeah, you guys, this is the Mothers to Be segment where you will be finding new and exciting facts about pregnancy, conception, and all things beyond when it comes to the health of our children and the future generations. So we're just so excited to be bringing this to you, and look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you so much, Claire. Lovely seeing you.
Thanks.
A little fly here.
Okay, we are live. So tell us your name, please.
Patricia Sepelowski.
David Sepelowski.
Where are you from?
Poland originally.
You know I have Polish blood. My grandmother's Polish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying. That's why we have an instant connection.
Yeah.
And you, what's your name?
Nell Sepelowski.
And how old are you?
I'm 9 years old.
Yeah, you're tall and beautiful. Stay away from those boys, okay?
Yeah.
Not having any of it. And this.
This is Ella. Ella, right?
How old are you?
Ella is 17 months. She's gonna be 17 months, right?
17?
Mm-hmm, 17
okay.
months.
All right, well, this is actually a very sad story. So do you want to start?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead.
So this is a story about our son, Filip. He was our second born, and he was diagnosed with pediatric brain cancer known as ependymoma at the age of 4 months. And so our story is a little bit different, because usually with the vaccine injury, you can pinpoint exactly to what day it was, what vaccine it was, what visit. So it's easier to kind of have a correlation. In our case, cancer usually develops silently inside your body, and you don't know for a very long time. But since he was diagnosed at 4 months, it makes me think that it should have started in the womb. So when I was pregnant, and when we got to the hospital, he only had 1 day of events that kind of worried us. We took him to local ER, and then from there they flew us to the children's hospital because he was in such an advanced stage already. The doctor, neurosurgery doctor, the first doctor that I saw, he told me, because I wanted to know why this happened to our boy. He was so good, like we didn't see any signs, and he told us sometimes it just happens, nothing that we did,
Just a
and
bad luck.
just a bad luck. So we were disappointed, because this is like taking the power away from you, that you have no control over it. Just some kids die, or some kids develop certain diseases, and that's it. But we were not buying it, and we started our own research. We were following the conventional medicine. We did chemo, radiation, everything. Whatever they told us, we did. But we were also looking into other sources, and I was reading, so first book that I read was The Truth About Cancer by Ty Bollinger, and from there I went to the other books, and somehow we came across The Truth About Vaccines, which we were not interested in, but since we love The Truth About Cancer series, we were like, well, why not watch The Truth About Vaccines? What's in the vaccines?
Right.
So we watched the series, and I think what struck me the most was the SIDS, because I would never believe that SIDS happens from a vaccine, and we were just dumbfounded. We were like, wow, some kids just die, or it's a bad luck. Some kids just develop those, they've been injured, and there's nothing you did. So this resonates with me, because I was like, this is exactly what they told us, Some kids just get those diseases.
But at the same time, I mean, you took the flu vaccine.
And that's what I'm trying to go to. I was trying to go through the pregnancy. What did I do? We don't do drugs, we don't smoke, we don't drink. We try to live like a healthy life. Yeah, I stay from like painkillers, antibiotics. Like I don't remember when I took my last one. So we try to, like, we were thinking maybe it's our diesel car, because I was commuting to work a lot, and I was like, maybe those fumes from diesel. You heard there was a story with the Volkswagen that they were cheating on the fumes. They were actually more harmful than they said. So we sold the car, but still, after learning about the vaccines, I was like, wait a second. Did the vaccine have anything to do with our son's, diagnosis? So then one time I listened to Robert F. Kennedy interview, and where he mentioned the Bourbak study, where they look at the monkeys, and so they couldn't find any trace of mercury after the injection into the bloodstream, but after they tested the monkeys post-mortem, they noticed that the mercury is all in the brain, and that's where my son's cancer started, in the brain. So I'm thinking like, wait a second, so I'm taking this vaccine, this goes straight to my blood, then through the placenta to his blood, and then it ends up in his brain causing, and every cancer has a primary infection and then inflammation. So if this caused the infection and then inflammation, and we also tried different ways of helping him out. We tried vitamin C, intravenous vitamin C. Can you imagine, with like a 2-year-old? Like he was very brave for going throughout all the treatments, but we did hyperbaric, we did keto diet, all the supplements, everything that we can throw at him, we were doing with him, but we could not reverse
But in our case, I mean, my wife, she was at work, and was conveniently, they were giving flu shots at her job location.
Yeah.
And usually she doesn't get vaccines.
Yeah, I didn't take with her.
And at that stage that the baby was in, we think that maybe the neurotoxin passed through her body, and it got to him.
Maybe his nervous system was just developing. I was around 4 or 5 months pregnant. So if, so many people take those flu vaccines, and someone can say like, oh, just blame it on anything, like blame it on vaccines. But I'm not looking like, I just want to know why. This is not going to return our son back, but I just would like to know why this happened, and if I can advise other mothers to like think twice. And I actually have when people were telling me, just do your research, especially with Filip when I was pregnant, I had some people, some strangers even, asking me about vaccines, which was out of ordinary. I didn't have that before, but they were asking me like, oh, are you planning to vaccinate? Do you know that hepatitis B, that disease doesn't affect kids, like, it doesn't affect most of the kids. It's a sexually transmitted disease. But so I found it strange, and the people were telling me, just do your research. So I found it offending, do your research. like, what do you mean do you research? Are you implying that I don't know something? Maybe it's a culture thing that, I just didn't like that phrase. And so I would say to any future mom, and I'm trying to speak out when I see like my friend going through pregnancy, or whoever wants to listen, whoever is open, I would say just watch the vaccine series, Truth About Vaccines. Follow doctors who are featured in those vaccines, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, Dr. Paul Thomas, Barbara Lowe Fisher. Follow their work and see what they are doing for decades now, trying to warn people about the harms from vaccination. And I would read Brian Hooker book and Robert F. Kennedy, Vax and Unvax, and Turtles All the Way Back. I'm actually on my last chapter, and then I'm
all the way down.
Turtles all the way down. That's right. They go all the way down. There's no stopping there. And if you still have questions, if you still are not sure what to do, then speak to your pediatrician and ask him, what is in this vaccine that you are about to give my child? What adjuvants? And what are the safety levels when we talk about aluminum? And if he can show you an excerpt from CDC website to show the safety levels, what is the safe level of, let's say, aluminum in the blood. And even if we can talk about safety when it comes to the heavy metals, and then ask him how much aluminum is in that shot. So you can compare those two. And I would also ask about the trials that were conducted on those vaccines. What was the placebo? Was it a true saline placebo, neutral placebo, or was it another vaccine which was also done in the same fashion? Like Turtles all the way down.
With Filip, we really learned a lot. Our life changed. We were really following the hospital recommendations. When Ella was born, she doesn't have any vaccination. She doesn't have any K shot. She didn't have a needle in her body since she was born.
Yeah.
And she's doing great, and she's not gonna get anything for sure. But
no more for you either.
No.
No, she was vaccinated.
I'll tell you what, your brother saved you from the Gardasil.
Yes, no, we're not going to that pediatrician anymore. We found a doctor who is like very open and pro-choice.
What would you like to be when you grow up?
I would like to be a pilot or a teacher.
Nice. What kind of a pilot?
The one that travels, like takes like people maybe to Europe, Asia, Alaska, like those places.
Yeah, and then you can upgrade mommy and daddy.
Yes, we're gonna fly for free.
Remember me? Hi. Great. That's a great occupation. I would ask you, but I think you're a little young. We'll ask you.
Yeah, she's still undecided.
So we're going to put his picture on the bus because we want this story, this is a very important story, and it makes total sense to us.
Yes, I wanted to just bring awareness and to share.
And it's hard. I mean, it's only a few years ago, right?
It is, he passed away July 10th, 2021. So just 2 years, a little bit over 2 years.
At home with us.
Yeah.
Not in the hospital. So.
Very beautiful. Like it was, but we saw the signs and we were like, we kind of felt it like it's coming. And he actually passed away. He was still breathing. I picked him up, and he passed away in my arms, and I could still feel the heartbeat. But didn't see like he wasn't breathing anymore, but the heart was just beat, and then I felt the last beat. Yeah, so I think he just was waiting for me to pick him up, like kind of like mother's intuition. Like now I feel it, like I have the intuition, and it's like me, like I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, no one, but just putting into simple way and trying to understand, and we just want an understanding, like.
Thank you for you.
Thank you for giving us this platform. Really appreciate it.
Of course, right. We will never forget him because he's going to travel. We're going to put him up there with the other babies.
Yeah. Thank you.
Autism destroys families, and more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
pledged to find out what is driving the country's rise in autism.
Compiling medical records from a number of databases. He'll direct resources to study environmental factors, exposures, and external factors.
Scientific progress on this has been slow because scientists are frankly scared to ask the question.
Genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin, and we're going to look at all the potential culprits.
With no a priori thumb on the scale, you can't look at that.
I am very grateful to the Secretary for finally saying from an important public platform that this is an epidemic and we need to find the causes and we need to stop it.
Other issues CHD has been pushing for years are finally gaining mainstream traction.
Today we're announcing we are removing industry members, pharma members from FDA advisory committees.
We're seeing reports that you're considering removing the COVID vaccine as a mandatory shot for children.
The recommendation for children was always dubious. The vaccine itself does have profound risk of myocarditis, pericarditis, even strokes.
Very, 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 very few people are still taking these things. In that sense, the mRNA vaccines for COVID in the marketplace are effectively dead.
We are working together to change the federal fluoride recommendations, and we're looking at the science now. There's a direct inverse correlation between fluoride exposure and low IQ in children.
Health officials announced plans to phase out 8 artificial dyes from our food supply.
The FDA is effectively removing all petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply.
We don't have a surveillance system that actually works, and that is a crime. And we will do that right away. And I understand the perverse incentives that need to be changed right away.
When there's a political will to answer a question like this, it will happen.
We're going to change things for real this time.